Hello, everyone. Hello, Roland.
Hi, hello everyone.
Nice to meet you again. So, every second Tuesday at 3 p.m., we are here live for you, and we are talking about retail technologies, and of course, about fiscalization. We are running streaming on several platforms, of course, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. But we are thinking in the future to limit that on LinkedIn because we just see that there are so many delays during the live session so that we get the comments, I don't know, maybe even 1 minute later. And then that's why we are trying maybe to test it a little bit to reduce the number of platforms that we are streaming on to see if then the live is really live without delay that we have now. So if you face these kind of topics that we are not answering on your question immediately, it means that we have certain delay and we are simply not able to do it immediately. Okay, so beside this streaming, I have to tell you that we are recording everything. So don't worry if you didn't make to be live with us. Just do it as you like. We will, of course, record it and we will have it on YouTube and LinkedIn so that you can watch it later as well. And last time I tried to mention it, but somehow it didn't work. We have also a walk a dog version. What do you mean? What do you think? What is walk a dog version of this session? If you know, comment it. If not, I can help you. It's a podcast version, of course. So it's published on Spotify, on Apple, and on Google. So you can listen to this live streaming as a podcast, of course, during you are walking your dog. That's why walking a dog version. So this session today is the last one before the holidays, so we'll have a short break. This is, by the way, we already run six of them, and this is the seventh one. So it's really good. The time is flying, I can tell you. And we will have after this one short break, and we will meet you next time on 18th of January. And we will run at 18th of January very special live session. We will run it from NRF in New York. We will be there and we will look for the most interesting topics over there and we will present it to you live. So next live session from New York, from this big and famous fair, NRF. Okay. I want to announce also something else very special, what we will have tomorrow. It's a webinar that we will have, and this webinar is called Retailing for Generation Z. Now, maybe some of you will ask yourself how it comes that somebody who is doing fiscalization wants to talk about retailing concepts for the Generation Z. The answer is very easy. We need, of course, to be the specialists in technologies and in the legal matters, but this is not enough. It's not helping us to produce these consultancies and solutions that we are producing. We need, of course, the understanding of the retailing as well. So this means we have to understand the concepts, we have to understand retailers, and we have to understand why are the retailers doing what they are doing. That's why we are always keen to understand the consumers and to understand the trends and so on, in order to map them with the fiscal laws and in order to be able to help the retailers how to run their business in the fiscal environment. Join us tomorrow. For the link for this webinar, just visit our page on LinkedIn, for example, and you can find very easily, very fast, the link to register and to join this free webinar, Retailing for Generation Z. Okay, let me give you some words about your host. So first of all, we are representing the company called Fiscal Solutions. We are 18 years old company, and if we would be in Germany this year, we could make a driving license, of course, with 18. So we are not new, we are not startup. We are 18 years concentrated on the fiscal and other retailing concepts and retail solutions. And we are present and active in 17 countries. Most of them are European countries, but lots of our customers are coming from around the world, from almost each continent of the planet. So we are very proud of that. We have just 4 products, and I like to compare that with a good restaurant. If you want to find and to understand which restaurant is good restaurant, just check his card menu. If they have a lots of dishes, they are probably not that good. So the good restaurants have always just a couple of dishes. So we, as well, we have just four of them, four major products. One is a retail platform, or let's call it requirements platform. It's an online portal where you can subscribe, let's say, for the country and get automatically all documents, news, and so on related to the fiscal and country requirements of that particular country. By the way, all those documents that you can find there are used by our development department to develop our middleware solution. So that's why it's a really development ready and business process ready documentation. Product number two are the workshops that we are running. So if you have, if you are in demand of additional consultancies, if our portal is not enough for you, of course you can talk to us and we can arrange the workshops. These kind of workshops are not one-on-one, it's a one-on-two because we are sending always two specialists to the workshops. One of them is a legal specialist and another one is technical one, because we strongly believe that if you want to implement properly fiscal law, you need two kinds of knowledge, legal and technical. That's why we are sending two guys to these workshops. And what is also very special about those workshops is a warranty. What does it mean? Usually, if you are attending these kind of workshops, you are receiving the information. And we know, of course, that after receiving a lots of information, everybody needs some time to process it. And this is exactly that. After this workshop is done, by the way, it's a one-day workshop. After the workshop is done, you are going to go home and you are starting processing and working on all those information that you got from us. Within 30 days, you have a warranty time, let's say, to ask whatever you want, any open points, any open questions, and we will answer to you and help you to continue with your processing of the requirements, let's say. Product number three, it's a software, it's a middleware. So these are the software components and modules which you can easily integrate in your POS application. And immediately you are, like a magic, let's say, able to be compliant with the fiscal laws in 17 countries. The big advantage is you just integrate once and you can serve all those countries independent if it's software-based, hardware-based, mixed, or whatever kind of fiscal law which you have over there. And the fourth one, if you are, product that we have, if you are using our software, of course, and if you need additionally some kind of help, we have a help desk, let's say, fiscal help desk, which is dedicated to the fiscal topics related to the functionalities, of course, but also related to the fiscal data. For example, just to give you one point, one service which is inside this help desk, we are checking your data, for example, so that they are logically and, of course, as a fiscal data like they should be. This is quite interesting. So 4 products like a good restaurant. Don't forget. Okay, this is about company, very short introduction. And now I would like to introduce ourselves. And maybe, Roland, could you give us a couple of words about yourself for those guys that don't know you yet? So please.
Hello. Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Roland Zaliszewski and I am sitting here in Novi Sad. So during your speech, I just tried to find when the Generation Z is placed in the history, and I found out it was from 1997 to 2012. So, and I realized that my first experience with fiscal printer was in 2003. So it's a typical date when then the guys from the Generation Z was born. Yeah. So, and in the last 20 years, I had chance to have a touch with many different devices, almost I think all types in the universe, in different countries. Yes.
Thank you for that, because it's telling us a little bit how old we are. So yeah, we are. Sorry for that. But the positive advantage of that is, Roland, that we know all those technical elements and those technical parts, which are historical, but some of them are still in use. So that's why it's not that bad.
Not bad, because I feel myself in a fiscal world like Generation Z in the real world. Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's good. Good comparison. Yeah. So let me give you also a couple of words about myself, and I would like to introduce myself today a little bit different. I will tell you a short story, In 2010, I think, I was invited in Croatia to Retail IT Summit to have a presentation about connected customer. It's let's say, first generation of Generation Z. Let's call it like that. And I had to talk about the connection to the networks, to internet, and so on. And I had to present in the beginning myself as well. Like now, I have to do it as well. And for that, I created a video which is describing my typical day, because I think if you want to know a person, just check the typical day of that person. What's going on the beginning of the day, in the morning, and how the day is ending, let's say. And now I want to show you this video. So here we go. This is my typical day.
You spend all day lying on the couch, walk in your boxes round the house. Look at your pale, ugly face, enough to make a mirror break. More half asleep than half awake, complaining that your body aches. Feeling sorry for yourself won't get you anywhere. So I'm singing you a happy song, just to cheer you up when you got it rough. So I'm singing you a happy song, just to cheer you up.
Starbucks is not sponsoring that.
Your room smells like bad Mexican. Pull up those blinds, let air come in. Your promises and blah 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 won't fix the strings on my guitar. We've been friends for much too long for me to watch you carry on like this. I missed you, I knew you'd do the same for me. So I'm singing you a happy song.
The second one in the queue has no phone. That's why it is falling down.
Yeah, I'm singing you a happy song, but it can't be that bad. There's better times ahead. So I'm singing you a happy song, but it can't be.
So you can see, I'm sure you understand it. So 12 years ago, I was, and I'm sure many of you as well, always connected. And today, it's not getting better. You saw me wearing this watch like a running watch during my run. Nowadays, I'm wearing it whole day, so I'm not taking it off at all. So this means all of us are more and more and more and more connected. So I'm as well connected guy as well. And this is exactly same like a trend that we have now in the fiscalization, because authorities are forcing, let's say, the retailers to be more or less online, to send the data as much as possible as data are happening. So if we are now moving from the introduction of ourselves to the fiscalization, we can see the similar trends that we have personally in our personal life, to getting more and more connected, more and more online. We can see them in the fiscal area as well. There is a big trend, let's say that the laws are changing, or even new laws are implementing, with a major target to get the tax relevant data as they are happening on the POS, means online, or maybe later during the day. So definitely, but to be connected. So this is one of the topics that we will discuss today. So the trends about the fiscalization. Sorry, and this is definitely one of the trends. But this is, of course, the trend which is related to any kind of fiscal environment. So even if you have a very old fiscal printers, for example, nowadays the authorities are changing the laws so that the retailers have to upgrade those printers to send the data, let's say, to the authority. So it makes sense to talk about all those existing fiscal hardware which is nowadays outside. It makes even more sense if you check the number of the countries which are today having this kind of laws. First of all, there are, I think, around 76% of the, for example, in Europe, 76% of the countries which are fiscal. It's a lot. And I am expecting that in a couple of years, we will have even more, maybe around 80 or even 90%. So almost all of them. And if we check now the situation and the fiscal requirements in all those countries, we will see that 75% are running fiscal hardware. some kind of fiscal hardware, not only fiscal printer. There are also different concepts, let's say, but 75% of them are using fiscal hardware. So this is a lot. And I think the retailers have to take this in consideration and to think how to deal with that. Okay, I started a little bit about the trends in that area, and I told you that connection is really trend. Maybe you could think that going online, like a software online, is a second trend, but we don't see it like that. We see that lots of new countries which are now implementing the fiscal laws have either software-based online fiscalization or just software-based fiscalization. I don't know if I think I know why it's like that the bigger countries like Germany, France, and so on are going more direction software-based fiscalization, and the smaller countries like Albania, Serbia, Croatia, and so on are going towards software online fiscalization. But it's like that. We see the mixture of those. Bigger countries are going purely to the software-based fiscalization, and smaller countries, let's say, to the online software fiscalization. I think, and now this is my personal opinion, I think it's related to the size of the country. Because if you take the Germany, and if you see how many taxpayers are over there, then you need unbelievable big infrastructure in order to connect all those taxpayers to the authority server, for example, in order to receive the data online. In the smaller countries, it's a little bit easier. Maybe this is the reason why we see that. Nevertheless, we think that the sending data online will become trend and will be definitely interesting. This is based on connection that we see as a trend. And the second trend that we see, and we can say definitely that it's trend, it's a use of signature devices. More and more countries are using signature device, let's say, to authorize and to, let's say, to put the digital stamp on the transaction in order to know that it's exactly produced by this and that taxpayer. So this is quite a trend that we see. Nevertheless, lots of hardware out there, and we have to talk about that definitely. And we don't think that in the following 10 years, at least, the hardware will disappear. Definitely, it will not disappear. I'm sure that even there will be a still used hardware. Maybe we will not see the new countries implementing the hardware, let's say, based, but it will be there. So that's why I think it makes sense to talk about the challenges. That's what we will do today. But before we go into the detail, let's say, about all those fiscal hardware and environments, let me give you some general points, let's say, and general view about why do we think that the hardware-based fiscalization is very complex for the retailer. So there are maybe lots of points, but I want to take out just 5 of them, or a little bit less even. So the most important, as I see. The first one, if the country is a fiscal country with the fiscal hardware in it, there is usually no big choice for the retailer to select hardware device. Usually there are 2, maybe 3 different manufacturers of fiscal whatever hardware, printer, whatever, and retailer has to pick up one of them and to implement them. I will tell you a short story, and this will maybe clarify why is this like that. As the Serbian government introduced the first fiscalization based on the fiscal printer, we wanted to be part of that. We want to certificate the fiscal printer as well. That's why we asked the government, let's say, about requirements. And beside the technical requirements, which were quite complex, I have to say, but they are not that problematical to fulfill, of course, because if you are an engineer, you know how to deal with them. But this is one side. The another side was more process-oriented and task-oriented, what is needed to do in order to certificate your printer. For example, one of that requirements was a deposit, and this deposit was 500,000 euro. And this deposit, you had to pay it as a manufacturer of the printer, and it should be, let's say, stored somewhere in Serbia and not touched, let's say, by you, as long as you are selling the fiscal devices in that country. Means you are paying and you are never getting that back. This is hurdle, definitely, which was very high, let's say, for many companies and for us as well. And that's why we decided not to do it. So this means there are lots of requirements which are influencing the number of possible devices in that country, and retailers have to deal more or less with monopolies because there are just 1, 2, or maybe 3 devices. That's it. Then another big point, if you imagine that 75% of the fiscal countries are running hardware, and the retailers, like for example IKEA, are present in all of them maybe. I think IKEA has 24 countries. Now imagine how big is the issue to manage all those different hardware in different countries. It's not just, to put somewhere a piece of hardware. You have to think about education, of course, how to use it, and related to all procedures and processes related to that. You have to think about software images in order to run those devices. And now just look at that. If you have 24 countries, you need a 20, and with different hardware, you will need 24 different images. And now you have a software update. If you have any kind of software updates, you have to do the change of 24 different images. This could become a big issue. And this is only because some hardware maybe in some countries are very specific for that one country. Unification is very difficult if you have a fiscal hardware. If we are talking just about one country and a large retailers, and we are mostly dealing with the large infrastructures and large retailers, then you have to think about rollouts and installations. It's not easy to install, let's say, 100 in the 100 stores. I don't know how many printers for fiscal printers. Sometimes those projects are even several weeks, sometimes even several months. And this is definitely a big issue. It's complex and it's expensive as well. And the last 2 points, I think those 2 points are something which is everybody talking about if we are talking about the hardware. First, maintenance. Fiscal maintenance, it's not easy because you just have to use the certain certificated infrastructure. I mean, the technical companies with a special license, let's say, to be able to do that. It's not that easy to include them in already existing maintenance and SLA agreements. Then you have to think about all those spare parts and deliveries and whatever is related to that. This is also quite complex. So the large retailers cannot make that easy one contract with a big provider of maintenance and then cover the fiscal country as well. So we are talking about many different maintenance providers in all those countries. And this is making it very uncomfortable, let's say, and very complex to manage. And at the end, let me mention just related procedures to all this hardware, because on one side, the government is forcing the companies to use the fiscal hardware. On the other side, there are certain procedures that you have to run if you have those hardware. I'm just thinking about one of them, end of day, for example. In many countries, if you want to run, not if you want, you have to run end of the day on the printer itself. And in many cases, you have to press button to start end of the day. And now, if the store is big and if the store wants to, let's say, to have a backup plan, if some of the printers are broken, they will have also printers which are not in use, but fiscalized. They are somewhere in the back office. You have to run end of day for those printers as well. So this means that there is a task for the guy in the store, for the employee, to go into the back office and to press the button, just that small task, to press the button to create end of the day of the printer. It's not big issue, it's a not big task, but you have to do that, and you have to, let's say, include that in the list of all other tasks that the guys in the store have to do. So changing the procedures in the store is really something that we see in many of those hardware-based fiscal environments. Roland, did I miss something of those important things? Because I think this is quite important before we go into the detail.
I think you covered most of things, but there are also a lot of other things if you go to the details, yes?
Yeah, we will go now in a couple of seconds to that. Let me just give you groups, let's say, as there are lots of different countries, as I mentioned, using the fiscal hardware. We created, let's say, 5 groups of those countries based on the hardware which they're using. First group are fiscal printers. Countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Italy, and so on are using a fiscal printer. You have to use it over there. Then we have countries which have to use fiscal modules, which could be internal or external. Internal module would be some kind of PCI card, for example, or even USB-based element or card, which you stick into the system, within the system, inside the POS. External would be kind of USB stick, for example, which you can just plug in and have a fiscal functionality, let's say, as an external module. The fourth one would be the fiscal group of the fiscal servers. Let me give you an example. In Italy, there is a possibility to use one server, RT server, for several POSs, which could be even spread over several stores, I think. I think one server per store. Yes, it's like that. So for the several POSs. But it's server, let's say, wherever you put it in the network. And there is a fifth group of those hardware-based fiscal devices, and these are the smart cards. And this is something where we see some kind of trends as well in the moment. So lots of countries are introducing them. Just an example is Austria and Serbia. We will discuss now all of those groups, each of them, and we will go a little bit more in detail about architecture, about description of this device. We will talk about integration aspects, OPOS, UPOS, JavaPOS, whatever, or some kind of other interesting things which are related to integration. We will discuss a little bit maybe data flow if it's specific and interesting. And of course, we will tell you some words about the biggest challenges and what do we think, how can you deal with them on the best way. So Roland, let's start with printers.
Yes, the printer is a good start because the fiscal printer is the most common device which is used for fiscalization since many years. And what is the fiscal printer itself? Actually, I think it's a simple, if you imagine the POS printer and you put some kind of fiscal model. So I have one, like, I don't know if you can see. So this is one printer. And usually, in addition to the printer, you have one board, which is actually responsible for fiscalization. And of course, you have a printer itself, which will print the receipt. What is the purpose of the model? So I have also one piece of this is to record all transactions on the way that the retailer cannot change it. Usually, this information is stored in some kind of memory, which is sealed, like you see here. And it is connected to the board and put together to the printer, and also the complete printer is sealed in order to not have possibility to change it. So when you make sales, all data will be recorded in this memory, and also it will be printed by the fiscal printer itself. When we're talking about fiscal printers and country where we have a fiscal printer, usually in all these countries we have another device which today will not include because it's related to small retailers. It's an ECR cash register, which is a small device which is all in one. It is actually act as a fiscal printer with integrated POS application. So Italy was the first country in the world where the fiscalization started, and you can guess which kind of fiscalization. It was a fiscalization with the fiscal printer. It was 1983. So since then, there are also other countries introduced their own implementation of different fiscal printers, and until the last years, it was most used approach for fiscalization. So in the last 4, 5, 6 years, we can see that also we have a new type of fiscalization. And even I cannot remember in the last years that some countries, if they introduce a new fiscal law, they always not use the fiscal printer. So actually, I didn't see the new country which introduced fiscalization to use a fiscal printer. So how it's used, what is architecture when we have a fiscal printer? So actually you have a fiscal printer which is connected to the cash register. It's always stored in the store and placed near cash register where the receipt is given to the customer. Yeah. The POS application is installed usually on cash register, and cash register is connected to the fiscal printer. So when the operator enters the transaction data, the POS application will send the data, usually it's items and the payments, to the fiscal printer, and the fiscal printer will record this information to the fiscal memory, and also it will calculate VAT and create a fiscal layout which will be then printed on the printer itself.
So the
in
VAT
addition,
is calculated by the printer, right? Not by the POS.
usually in all fiscal printers, the VAT is calculated by the printers. Usually the VAT rate is set in the printer inside, and the POS application will send the item, will send the price, quantity, and will send also the tax group. And then the printer itself will calculate the tax amount from the gross amount from item line, and it will calculate then the summary of the tax at different tax rates. And it will be automatically printed on receipt and stored. So what is also, I think it's common for the fiscal printer that only the aggregated values are stored in the fiscal memory, because I found out the usually capacity of the fiscal memory is 256 kilobytes. And actually it's always stored only the accumulated daily value. And in addition to that, in some printers we have a journal printer, which is it is used to print also paper for as an archive, or they use a SD card to keep this information, and it's called usually electronic journal. Yeah. Also, the very common thing for fiscal printer, it's a very popular and known end of the day report, which actually has two purposes. One purpose is to exactly make this accumulation, summarizing of the values per tax rates, and writing down in the fiscal memory. And the second is to create a report, which is usually kept in the store in some book or in some place. What is also important, all these fiscal printers has usually also battery where they keep information about the daily sales until the end of the day is done.
Great. I have a couple of questions. Can I ask
Mhm.
you now? That's great,
Yes.
because I remember some of the troubles that we had during the integration. But before I start with that, can you maybe give some words how the fiscal printer is becoming fiscal printer? Because I know that there are producers of the free printer, like for example, Diebold, Epson, and
Mhm.
I think Datex in Bulgaria, for example.
Yeah.
They are
Mhm.
usually producing the same printer, and you can
Mhm.
find the same printer in different fiscal countries. So it's
Mhm.
really the same printer. So why is the printer maybe in I don't know, in Bulgaria absolutely same like in Romania, that is Diebold Nixov producing, and is it the same, or what is the difference? How it's become fiscal for that country?
It looks same, but usually it's different. So first of all,
Same but different.
yes, for the printers, usually we use the standard POS printer, which usually has an extra space in the printer in order to put this fiscal memory module. And then we have usually two approach. One is that the producer of the POS printer will also create this fiscal memory board, and it always must be created according to country requirements. So actually this logic, it's exactly defined by the legal regulation. And when they need to pass certification process. And when then done it, they actually sell the printers together with this board. And
Can I
then
take for example Bulgarian printer,
Mhm.
reprogram it, and have a Romanian one?
Theoretically, yes, but usually it's not the case, because in most scenarios there is some specific for the country, and usually they create dedicated devices or fiscal boards for one country, which then together with the printer will represent the fiscal printer. And that is the reason why in many cases, for example, Epson or Diebold printer in one country, it's completely different in other country. But technically you can reprogram, but actually
Doesn't make sense.
doesn't make sense. Yes, because it has to pass certification process. So actually you need to buy already certified printer in a country when you want to use it. Yes.
Yeah, clear. So some of the customers, some of the retailers that we are serving in several countries ask us this kind of question. So I have too much printers in Romania. Can I reprogram them and use them in other country? So this is perfect explanation for that. Thank
Yes.
you. So the
And
next big question. Yes, please.
yes,
Sorry.
I would just forget to say the another also approach is which is common for some printer suppliers, that the printer suppliers give the printer to local companies, and then our local companies which they implement their own way, the fiscal board. So that's why actually, if you, for example, it's typical for the Epson. The Epson usually doesn't care about fiscalization. They will sell the printer to the different companies, and even in one country, you will have a different suppliers of the same printer, but it's a different fiscal printer, and even they will have a different interface. And even if you see one printer, which is Epson, for example, in some country, you will have then different interface, even if it's one brand, but it's usually sold under different name.
Yeah, thanks for that. Another big topic, rounding. So we just discussed a little, or you just told us that the calculation of the VATs is done in the printer. So this means the printer is having its own algorithm how to calculate VAT, how to apply the percentages, and so on. On the other side, POS has it as well, and POS will calculate VAT as well. It will not send it to the printer, but it will use it for internal reportings and all these kind of things. And even POS reports that are sent to the head office will contain this calculation coming from the POS. And the third place, which is running as well VAT calculation, but just on a different way, let's say, maybe on a different way, this is a head office financial system. So actually we have three systems which are used to calculate the same thing. And it's very difficult mathematically to have the same calculation without differences. Can you explain a little bit more about that? How to deal with that? How to solve this issue?
Yes, there are different ways to solve, and also it depends from country to country. First of all, it also depends on the device itself, because, for example, in some device, the printer will calculate taxes based on item unit price. For example, in some countries, you will supply the item line price, so which already makes the problem is different. Also, in some countries, printer will provide also tax calculation, and the PS application will provide possibility for post application to take a tax calculation for the printer and compare it, and may change in transaction on the PS application. Also, in some country, there is a rounding differences which are allowed. So actually, you don't need to do nothing. You simply calculate by yourself, and printer will calculate. And until these differences in enough small, you can book it as a rounding differences. So this is really country dependent, and it always happens, especially if you have a discounts, because discounts will always give some rounding issue. Also, if you have a weight items, especially in the petrol station, because they have a lot of decimal places for the quantity for the fuel. And also it can be, for example, in case of
yeah, but that's it. Actually, these are the major cases. I think as you have to calculate percentages, you will have always differences, I'm sure. And the last question, then can we move on to the next point? And I know this is always some issue related to the technique, integration, and later maintenance. This is the timer in the printer. Printer has its own timer, own watch, right?
Yes, and I mentioned the printer has inside some battery. And battery has several purpose. One purpose, the main purpose is, of course, to provide the power supply for the board. And on board we have a clock, which will be always used for every transaction. Also, in different reports like set report. And also this memory will be used to keep data until end of the day it's done. And this time also has to sometimes be synchronized, because we had experience that from time to time this time will different to the real time, and there is always this time difference. And then depending on country, there's a different way how to solve these scenarios.
But just one more point. This is one complexity. I see it always as a quite complex issue. The another one is summertime and the winter time, and change between that. In many cases, in many countries, you have to do this manually. Am I right?
In some countries, it has to be manually. So the printer usually has a function to move 1 hour forward and 1 hour backward, but you have to trigger this operation. In some country, it's automated, and we had experience in some countries actually it works, but sometimes not. So actually you need to have two options. And even we had some countries which forget, for example, to count days. We had in Bosnia
Yes.
a scenario that the printer forget about every 4 years in February we have a 29 days. And as remember,
Yes. Yes.
all shops in Bosnia stopped on the same day because at one on all retailers who use one fiscal printers, because the producer of the fiscal device wrongly calculated and implemented the date. And next day, when I ask when will be the firmware update, they say we don't have a problem next 4 years, so you can be relaxed.
This is good, but I remember, and just for our guys who are now following us on this live stream, can you imagine how difficult it is to find this bug? So the store is closed more or less. You cannot sell. The fiscal printer is not working. It's not allowed to work without fiscal printer. There are some manual procedures, but it's very complicated. So, and now you have to find a software bug. You are taking everything. You are taking a POS application. You are taking everything, but nobody's thinking about, oh, today is 29th and it's not 28th. So it took us years to understand and to find the bug. So this is quite a complex issue, I would like to say, right?
Yes.
Okay,
It was
let's
interesting,
move to the next topic. We could talk about printers for 1 million of years because it's a really, really interesting
But
issue.
without, you want to move to the next topic in fiscal printer or switch to another
No,
device?
let's switch to another group of devices because the
Okay,
time
but
is running.
few things just to say about the challenges, because I think
Yes,
the most
yes.
challenges is coming to the fiscal printer. First of all, we will need to say that printers are usually connected by RS-232, USB, and LAN. And we have a different challenges. And I think the most challenges are coming with the fiscal printer. Why? Because they located in the store. So actually they need to be near the cash register where the receipt is given to the customer. Also, they usually create a layout by the printer itself. So you actually need to match your application to the layout which is defined by the fiscal printer. Then you have sensors for the paper covers, so you need to integrate and support the different events and manage the different error handlings. So in case when we have a cloud solution which are dislocated from the store, your printer it's located on the store, so it's really then the complex to have this integration. Then if you have outdoor devices like OPT or self-checkouts, then sometimes the size of device not fit to this device, and there is a limited number on the device. So there are many issues. For example, you can have also legal requirements, specific software certification. The Hungary, for example, and Romania, it's a well known about complexity because you need to integrate a lot of things which are actually not required to the retail, only for the country. And of course, there is a lot of other issues like documentation, different kind of integration type, low level, by using different drivers, obtain the demo devices, ship these devices, and then if you ship, you stay without battery, they don't work, so you need to change. So there are a lot of complexity, and I will say the fiscal printer will stay the most complex device for integration in the fiscal world. And I think it's good because today it's not anymore so popular. So actually we are moving to the other devices. The next device, what you mentioned, it's a fiscal modules. Fiscal module is actually, you will get a fiscal module if you take out the fiscal board from the fiscal printer, like this, for example, and put it in a separate box or put it in the PCI card. So then can be put it in the PS hardware, or can be connected by USB on RS-232 to the device. And then we have also several options, for example, in Lithuania, Latvia, and I think Belarus. You can connect the printer to this fiscal module external, any printer which supports certain ECR protocol for communication. And then this board will act as a fiscal device. Also, the challenges are, I can say, similar. If the device it's not connected to the printer, then at least you have a possibility to create your layout. But you have other challenges like device maintenance. You have a different country-specific functionality, and all. I think other challenges are more or less similar, like a physical printer. So I try to squeeze this because actually this is type of device very similar to physical printer. Then we have what is the next device? I think the fiscal server, yeah?
Yes, this is the next one, fiscal server.
Yes, so we have also one fiscal
You
server.
have server on your desk.
Yeah. One, it's a Beeble mixer. It's a very nice. It's good quality. It's heavy. So I like these heavy devices. So actually, it's an embedded PC. Like here, you can see
Yes.
that you have usually you have a network interface. One is going to the government, and one is going to the cash register. So, and what is the purpose of this? So, for example, this is work in Italy. You will have a one-pad store, and you can place it locally in the store, or even you can place it centrally, as I remember. But all cash register will send the transaction to this device, and this device will actually save this information. It will generate some fiscal receipt number and some other fiscal text and signs. And actually, you need to print this information on the receipt, and actually, this will be the fiscalization. So how it works? So actually, the POS will just capture data like on a fiscal printer, send it for fiscalization. So integration, it's usually always done by the web service. Usually we have most common it's a REST protocol, and you can have a XML, JSON, text-based payload where the PS cash register will send the data to the device for fiscalization. And if we're talking about challenges, we can say that this is much more convenient device if you compare to fiscal printer. First of all, you don't have and don't need to handle with all these events and errors because you don't have a paper and these sensors. Also, you can share this device with different POS. So also it's much better convenient for the mobile POS, because if you have a fiscal printer, you know it's a mobile POS which is heavy if you connect the fiscal printer. Then, for example, for the cloud also application much better for integration. But
who is responsible for the invoice or receipt layout? In this case,
in this scenario, the receipt layout is always in responsibility of the PS application. So actually, they will get the data from this device, and they need to create. In these countries, for example, also you can create also e-receipt. So, for example, you don't need to print it if, of course, the government allow it. And also in this, also you always have offline scenarios because it's a network device. You can have scenarios where you don't have a connection to the device due to issue on the network, and you need to have then special procedure for the communication and for management of offline receipts.
Let's just discuss a little bit possible architectures. Let's assume I'm a big retailer and my head office is in Germany, and I want to run the stores in Italy, and I have in each of the stores more than 3 POSs. So according to the law, it's allowed to use RT server. Can I buy 100 RT servers, put them in the head office in Berlin, for example, and the Italian store, can they use them? Is it allowed?
Italy, as I remember, in Italy, you can put it in the store or you can put it centrally, but you need to have one device per store. This is the rule. So one device, but usually it's more convenient to be in the store due to not have many scenarios with offline. So it's more convenient, but for maintenance purpose, it's better to have it centrally.
And technically, it's the same. It doesn't matter where is it located, because it's just the internet and network protocol.
Yes. So I think it's a quite good scenario. Also, we have examples that this device is placed in the supplier. For example, in Germany, we have a TSC, for example, which actually, from the client side, it's like a cloud, but actually they have something. They have usually some piece of hardware where the application running. So we can also say this is also the fiscal server, which is located.
Yeah, logically it's the same.
Yes, it's the same, and of course it's bigger than this, and it allows to be accessed for many users. and actually it's placed and for the at the supplier, and for the retailer it's then we are talking about cloud-based fiscalization or web service-based fiscalization, but on the end up technically it's server. Yes.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Okay, so what would be the biggest challenge in the server client-based architecture that you just mentioned? So I think from my point of view, offline case. What do you
Yes.
think?
Yes, it's an offline case, and also maybe there are some specific functionality in Italy. For example, you need to manage to have an end of the day, even you don't have a fiscal printers, and then you need to manage for all
To
post.
press the button manually on the server,
Yes.
you have to run to the server room and
No, you need to initiate end of the day from each, as I remember, for each PS, for example. But this is specific for Italy. In some countries, it's not so complex, so you have a easiest integration. So this is the most I think most challenge what you need to do.
Okay, great. Let's move to the last group, and these are the smart cards.
Yes, this is a very small. Usually, it's a large group, so I think you can see. Yes.
Yes.
So this is a smart card. So what is the smart card? So actually, it's a some kind of intelligence. So it can be embedded microcontroller or equivalent intelligence, which is together with some small internal memory placed on the chip. Usually, it can be in the form like a credit card, or even smaller, like a small card, for the phone. Yeah, and this small card, smart card, it's always used to create a signature, and sometimes in some country also to store the basic fiscal information. Since the memory size is limited usually to few kilobytes, there is a very limited amount of information what you can store here, and it's usually if it's placed, then we have for example, fiscal receipt number placed on the smart card, and also we can have the total amount and maybe amount per tax rate, and that's all, which is always accumulated, always the last one. Yeah. And how it's used, so you will need to have usually card reader or smart card reader, so it depends, or even USB stick with the smart card, which is connected to the printer, and then to the cash register, and cash register application has to send sometimes data, or sometimes even some char array, which is already formatted like in Austrian specific format, and to send it for the signature. And actually the signature will be performed by the smart card by using certificate, which is usually also placed together here in the smart card. Yeah. And also this is also give us also idea how to make an integration. So because we are using the smart card, there is usually two ways how to integrate it. One, there is an UPDO protocol, which is very common for the smart cards, and we can say this is the low-level protocol, which is standardized by ISO, and usually you can access this smart card with this, or you can have some driver, which is usually a custom driver or country specific or supplier specific, because there is no standard for such a device in the world. And then the PS application has to send the data for the signing and made for the storing. Yes.
And I think there are countries where you can have these functionalities out of the cloud. For example, I think in Austria was that the case.
Mhm.
I think in one of the accounts that we have, we're running installation with that, right?
Yes, there are also several possibilities. So one is that you have a locally, and then also have a possibility in Austria to put in head office, for example, few smart card readers.
HSM or something like that, right? It's HSM called, I think.
No, this is the third option. So second option is to
Uh-huh.
put a few readers in the head office,
Uh-huh.
and then use it centrally. And the third option, there is a dedicated PC, and there is a special certified PC. Then we don't have a smart card anymore. Actually, then the certificates are located in the server, and then we are not talking about smart cards. So then we are back to the server. So
Server,
it's not
yes.
it's not anymore the smart card. Yeah.
This is now very important for our people that are watching us. So this means what we now presented is classification according to the hardware types.
Yes,
It doesn't
not
mean that
automatic.
one country has just one type of the hardware.
Yes,
Usually they
exactly.
are mixing even the concepts, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like
So
in Italy, we have a server and the fiscal printer. Like in Austria, we have a server in the cloud, this central server, or we can put this card in the store or even in the cloud.
I think even the best example is Germany, because in Germany you have all of those types that we just, not the printer. Yeah, there is a printer as well. There is Epson printer
Yes,
with
but you don't
included
have a card.
TSC.
I can say you don't have a card. You have a USB stick, but this
Yes.
is like a embedded. This I will classify it as a fiscal module because
Yeah.
embedded into USB stick. This is the one option.
Right.
Then you have a server like
Server.
this, something like this, yes,
Yes.
which is located in the store, which is accessed by the network. Also,
There's
you
a
can
box or something like that, right?
yes, the box, yes. Then you can have a printer. I think there is an Epson printer which actually has a embedded hardware into printer, and it's act two in one, like two device in one device.
Yeah, it's
And
not a
also,
typical fiscal printer, but it's
yes,
just a housing of the fiscal printer with included TSC, right?
yes, yes.
And
It's
some
actually two
connections which are
devices in
specific.
one box. Yes. From my point of view, this is a two device in one box. And also we have a server, like normal server in the cloud. So there are different type of architecture and different mixtures. So
Right.
what we also left, I think the challenges for this smart card. So I think it's also very convenient, this, if you compare to the fiscal printer. Although you need to have this device reader, which may have a then security issue. If you put it in a store, someone can stole, or it can be lost because someone is cleaning and it's not properly, for example, fixed to the PS cash register. Then you need to also have a management offline scenarios, because this device can be disconnected from the cash register. Then maybe you need to have some.
Yeah, in this case, sorry to interrupt you. In this case, offline means that there is no connection between card reader and POS. It's a not connection between card reader and internet authority or whatever, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, this is important to just to explain.
Yeah.
Good.
And
So
also
yeah,
there
this
is
is
in many cases some country-specific functionality what you need to implement where we are using this device. So, but this is not the device-related challenges; it's a more legal challenges. Yeah.
Great. So I think this is a quite interesting and quite good overview about all, let's say, different fiscal hardware. I don't know that there is in the world any kind of fiscal hardware which could not belong to one of those groups that we just described. Maybe if you know something, please just put your comment inside. So if there are devices that we didn't talk about, we can include that. Or if you have any kind of questions, please just put it in comment below, and we will definitely answer them immediately. If you don't have any questions in the moment, we can shortly close this session. And at the end, I want just to repeat, first to thank you very much for this session, being here, of course. And thank you very much for all the sessions that you were with us in the past. So it means all 6 and now the 7th one. It would be our pleasure to continue like that, definitely. And we will. And we have very interesting topics for the next year. There will be nice ideas that we want to implement. Don't just join us. Please subscribe to and follow our page on LinkedIn so that you are always informed about the things that are happening on our side. And I can tell you there are lots of them. Don't forget tomorrow to join us on our Generation Z webinar. This will be, I'm totally sure, very interesting. And I'm keen to understand Generation Z and then to understand retailers following Generation Z and providing the services and products for them. And we will definitely implement some of those topics in our products, in our portfolio. So it will be for sure very interesting for us.
And I
Join
think
us.
It will be presented by the person who is belong to Generation Z.
Yes, that's Milica. She is in the back office. Hello,
Yes.
Milica. She is taking care that everything is running smoothly. So thank you, Milica, for that. Stefan is just Stefan. Like I'm in Germany, so I'm reading Stefan as a Stefan. I will never be Stefan. Stefan, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm expecting you next year with us, so definitely. We will be in New York on 18. I'm sure that this will be extra interesting because this is the new format, let's say, for us. We will visit different retailers, and we will pick up some very interesting innovations, and we will talk about them over there. Franziska, thank you that you are here. It's our pleasure to see you and to have you here. Magnus, thank you very much that you are here. It's our pleasure. I promise you coffee in New York, so don't forget. Just visit us, and we have a coffee and cookies for you as well. But I have to take care of the cookies, so not too much of them. But we will prepare them for you. Guys, Merry Christmas to all of you. Have a happy and a nice new year, and see you soon again. Thank you, Roland.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.